Live. Okay, great. It's always kind of amazing to me when it works. It's like, wait, the system works. Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? My name's André Chumley. We're here on Make Weird Music. And I knew I'd have to be careful tonight to not mix up make weird music and make noise music, but I'm doing well so far. But we're on Make Weird Music. This is my show called The Gear Spotlight. And really was looking forward to this one. This is going to be a conversation with somebody who I'm honored to call a dear friend, but also as a longtime synth head, as I have been most of my life, and as someone who's followed the history of synthesizers and followed the rebirth of really the synthesizer world a couple times. This is a man who has founded a company called Make Noise. It's an incredible synthesizer company in Asheville, North Carolina. Some call us Synth City, USA. We'll talk about that. This man is a synthesist. He's an inventor. He's a thinker. He's a lover of all kinds of music. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Rolando. How are you, Tony?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Really great to have you, man. Well, I want to start out with, it's been 16 months of a very, a very bizarre sci-fi movie, and I want to start there, ask how you're doing, and I'll frame it by saying, I know that, and so the public knows that y'all at Make Noise have released two great new pieces of equipment under these difficult times: the Zero Control or No Control, and the Strega. So
Right.
that's the first thing I want people to know. But talk to us about this year and 16 months, what it's been like.
Well, as far as the releases, I think both of those were actually finished well before the pandemic, and really, actually, the Strega was supposed to come out probably, almost a year. It basically got delayed by about another 8 months due to the pandemic. I know what it was. We were going to show it at the Super Booth that ended up getting canceled. So the one that was, I guess 2020 Super Booth, or no, 2019. Was it the 2020 Super Booth? Yeah, we were supposed to show it at the Super Booth, and then Super Booth got canceled. So we didn't show it. And then we decided to wait it out and see when would be a good time to launch it. And then it seemed like there wasn't really going to be some better time to launch it. So then we just launched it when we launched it. I think we're probably handling it the way most other companies are. We've had plenty of struggles, supplier issues. Most of our crew has actually been pretty great. We haven't really had a whole lot of struggle with our crew. Everybody on the crew was happy to get vaccinated and got vaccinated ASAP and was excited to be back in the shop working whenever we could get them back in the shop working. So we have a great crew who were just excited to be here and working. So that was no struggle for us, but the struggle of getting parts and getting things all lined up, the logistics of operating in the COVID economy, I guess, like everybody else, is a struggle.
Sure. Well, that's great. That's commendable, and I loved. Of course, for those who don't know, I live a mile or two from
Right.
which I have walked there, and it's such a great thing to go around the world as I do on tour, and I run into music stores, or I'm playing on a bill with someone, and oh, cool, Make Noise. I live a mile away. What? So I forget that it's really a cool thing. But I also want to make sure people know that I know you and Kelly and all the folks that work there, and it's such a beautiful place. Also in the energy and the good people who are there, and how you really took care of your employees in this tough year. So I think people should know that's such a cool thing too. And people, I think, know, because you speak to the press a lot, and people know that there's a real extra energy there. And like you said, the great staff that went to bat for all this. Well, so happy that you weathered through it and you keep going. I wanted to show people real quick and then run over these items. There is an incredible um, piece of gear called the No Control, and let me start there. Like one of my favorite electronic bands, Autechre, and they encourage you to pronounce it whatever way you want, right? They say whatever you want, Autechre, Autisher, Autisher. So tell us, is it zero control, no control? Do you care? Is there any?
Yeah, I don't really care. I know that the lawyers at the trademark office are pretty concerned about it, but I kind of picked it with the idea that people would call it as they saw it. So yeah, some people say zero control, some people say no control. I've also heard O control.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure there's other variants.
Oh,
Yeah,
as
so it's great. I like that people can interpret something like that.
yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, nice touch. Other variants, yes, that's that's part of the news.
I'm sure there is. I remember when we did the DPO, there was all sorts of hilarious readings into that particular acronym, which the actual name was derived by myself and Robert A. Lowe.
Oh,
He had been testing an early prototype, and he had mentioned that the sound of it was almost prismatic, and
wow.
so I liked that, and so it kind of hung on to that, and ended up calling it the dual prismatic oscillator. But there's been many other.
Oh,
Also, dual primary oscillator was another one. The Dolly Parton oscillator. There's been many. Different variants on that acronym, but I think that I like that. I like when people have fun with something
right.
like that.
Do a little artistic work on it. Well, I love that, and there's so many things packed into that answer that I want to come back to. But just so people know, it's a controller and a step sequencer, which is just a fantastic combination of things. And there's nods to, things like the Buchla easel, I guess, and all kinds of other devices.
Yeah, it's a
But yet
nod,
it's
definitely.
unique.
Yeah. It's a nod to the early capacitive touch sensing synthesizer controllers and programmers and sequencers. So yeah, the Buchla touch controllers, the Serge TKB is another one. And there's probably some others that I'm not thinking of.
Sure.
But it's great to use. Also, I use it all the time with Ableton. I just use the CV tools and fire out a clock or gate sequence into it and lock it into that so that it's easy to capture performances using it. It's really fun and fast to use is what I found. It doesn't take very long to get something going. So if you're in a spot where you need some inspiration or you need some complementary voicing, it can really be good for that.
That's great. Yeah, and I love that woven into a lot of your design and a lot of your synthesizers and components is that idea that there's a back and forth between the human and the machine, and this is such a primary area of that. So yeah, for any synthesis out there that somehow don't know about this, but if you didn't watch some videos on it, check it out. It's very unique, and it's very hands-on, very immediate feeling sort of a thing. So that came out. So you're saying so that was after all that was ready before the pandemic came.
That
It
was,
just
yeah. Well, so was the Strega, really. So, one other sequencer I was forgetting to mention, the
mm-hmm.
Buchla Mark,
Mm,
the multiple arbitrary function generator.
mm.
So there's a thing that the zero control can do that is deeply inspired by the Mark, and that is a one of the sequencing channels is tied to the clock rate,
Okay.
and so you can, most step sequencers have one clock rate. You can speed it up or slow it down, of course, but every step is at the same time constant. But with the Mark, you could use one of these two rows of sliders could be applied to the time constant. So each step of the sequence could be on a different time constant. And so the zero control incorporates that as well, which is kind of like above and beyond the touch control. It incorporates this idea of having each step be a different time constant. And it can really make for some sequences that feel a little more, well, and in some cases, a little more jumbled up. And in other cases, you can really find like a pocket, like a groove that you wouldn't normally get with a step sequencer. And then that's further enhanced by, there's another row that lets you control, so it has a built-in envelope generator. And so it lets you control the dynamics of whatever you're sequencing with the other row, the strength row. And so that also can really, so often with step sequencers, every note's the same amplitude, the same time constant, but being able to vary the amplitude and the timing per step can really make the sequences feel a lot more, for the lack of a better word, organic. It just really, it's amazing how those two really simple concepts can make a sequence just come alive.
Yeah.
You know, people think more notes, 32 steps, 48 steps, that's going to do it. It's not. Being able to have those two, it's only 8 steps, but being able to have the variable time constant and strength per step, really, it changes things in a big way, even though it's so simple. I think that's why it's so fun to use, because it's only the 8 steps to keep track of, but you have those extra controls. It really makes it a little more expressive, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on, and that's expression. I mean, after all, you have this explosion of MPEs and things like the
oh yeah, and you want to talk about
Rolly.
that, huh?
Well, there's all that, but you know what? I'm kind of I'm on the fence on the MP stuff. People are always, and they're great. I've played a Rolly. I've played help me out, the Continuum. You know, I've played. And these are cool things, but I also feel that people have skipped over a whole lot of expressive stuff you can do, exactly to your point, within existing hardware or within smartly designed hardware. But those things are great too. But you're right. Instead of having a million more notes, let's have deep expression. So, well, that's really great. I'll segue and just say that I love also the Buchla connection and the fact that you respectfully bring that history forward, but not in a cloney way or a kind of a. I mean, some things obviously have nothing to do with the Buchla idea, and I love that you look at all of synthesizer history. I was in. I got to play a Buchla in Melbourne, of all places. I was at the Mess, which I think you know about that.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
synthesizer fans here, if you don't know about the Melbourne Mess, check that out. It's the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio, I think.
I remember you sent us some photos from it.
Exactly, ridiculous collection.
Yeah, it looked great.
It was amazing. But as I was going to say, one of the remarkable things was there was a couple make noise things there. And right, I had just got my No Coast, so the young woman there, Emma Fox, played one live. But wherever I go, and I've gone to everywhere except Africa and Antarctica so far, but every continent your instruments are, and I just love that. And I work with so many international people, and I'm so proud of what you all have done. Talk to me about that a little bit, that thread of somebody who had this dream, started learning about synthesizers, and just go to that last part, though, of that your inventions and the work of your great colleagues at Make Noise is everywhere on Earth. I mean, what is that in a decade? Just reflect on that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, reflect on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
heavy,
weird
man.
question, but I know it's a heavy one.
That's heavy.
I know.
I mean, it's obviously it feels incredible. You know, I was just actually, I had the privilege, the great opportunity to work with Alessandro Cortini on the Strega, and then just this morning, actually, he and I are collaborating on a piece of music. We're doing a Strega compilation. Wow. Just like recordings that are kind of, I guess, made with the Strega as sort. They don't have to have only the Strega on them, but Strega is sort of like the dominant force in the recordings. And, he was sending me back some of the material that he had added to some very minimal material that I'd submitted to him. And I was listening back to it, and it like brought a tear to my eye. It just sounded so beautiful and incredible. And I thought, how did I end up, getting the opportunity to do this? I mean, I don't know. It's incredible. Yeah, seeing people use these things everywhere, and I think most people get a lot of joy out of them. So I feel really lucky to have my livelihood tied largely to joy. Not everybody has that privilege of like the thing that you do brings joy to people. A lot of people have to do things that, don't bring joy, and then they might still get paid well for, like a dentist gets paid very well, but, nobody's really excited about going to the dentist. Whereas, if somebody is going to the synthesizer shop to pick up their new QPOS filter, that's like a little bit of Christmas morning, as they come home from work. And I'm sure you felt the same way as being, a guitar a tech for some of these musicians who draw thousands of people into a venue to, chant the lyric to every song of the set. These people are having the times of their lives seeing these performances. It's like, it's a cool thing to be a part of that. I feel like that's kind of what it is for us. Like, we make these instruments, and then people create amazing music with them. And some people share it. Some of it you hear all over. Other people, it's just something they do in the privacy of their own home, but it brings them great joy. So knowing that you're a part of that is like a beautiful thing.
Wow. No, that for an odd question, I will admit, great answer, and a lot of good stuff there. I love what you said. To have your livelihood tied to joy. Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's a T-shirt line almost. No, really, to have your livelihood. That's it. If we can, any of us can get to that. That is so. Kudos. I'm so happy you brought up Alessandro, because I got my notes right here, and so you're reading my mind. But of course, that's one of those examples too. And there's so many great albums that are out now, and artists that make noise equipment. So we're going to jump to Alessandro in just a second, and the Strega. I just want to make sure I'm tracking on YouTube here, because people jump in and they're giving some love. So lots of people saying hi, and we got your links up there, by the way. So for those of you who've not visited the Make Noise music.com, really a great website. And I'm not just saying that. It's very complete. I go to manufacturer websites all the time because of my career. I'm always somewhere looking for a manual. It drives me crazy. These folks have every single manual right there. It's spotty out there, folks. A lot of companies don't do that. So that's great. They have a product demo video on every it's really a well-done site. And I'm not just blowing smoke, because I go to hundreds of websites, and it's always a joy if I want to find something out. Your site's great. So people should go to that. We've also got the Make Noise Instagram up there, which Walker and many of Tony's colleagues are continually putting up great videos.
Actually, it's Walker does the YouTube.
Oh, sorry.
Which is also great. And Pete is large. Every once in a while they swap it up. Mm-hmm. We do like a Freaky Friday body swap where
okay.
Walker steps into Pete's shoes, Pete steps into Walker's shoes. But it's largely Pete and Lewis. Lewis does all the animations, awesome. And then Pete does most of the videos. We have guests too. We have guests who do content for us for both the YouTube and the Instagram. For example, Basek has done a lot of great posts for us. Or this woman, Sarah Bell Reed, did the Strega launch video, which was incredible. I mean, she just went above and beyond any expectations that I could have possibly had.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's great, and thank you. And please correct me on some of those details, because some of those I just don't know. Basek is incredible. Got to see him play at Moog Fest. And,
he was so good. Yeah,
so good. And Sarah, I couldn't be a bigger fan. And she is such a great performer, and I love the aspect of being a classically trained musician and coming in with trumpet.
Right.
And I also just love, as I love about a lot of the folks that work for you, that someone in their 20s is carrying this whole music forward. That is,
Right.
so Sarah Bell Reed, folks, look her
Not
up.
just a bunch of old guys like us.
Exactly, yeah. So,
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have some.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, just a couple hellos. Todd Reynolds says hi. Thank you, Todd, for being here. Todd is a violinist and a composer who uses a lot of make noise stuff. And this is a man who's worked with Meredith Monk and Steve Reich and all these people.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and so he knows sound. He knows sound creation. He's a great synthesist and composer, and he's a good friend of mine. So, and when make noise comes up, that's it. We're talking for 20 minutes, but he uses a lot of your stuff. So happy to see Todd here. Thank you. A lot of people just saying, "Hey, we love make noise." Next stop, Antarctica. That's funny because Sharon says that because before a couple of days ago, I was Googling because there are some people in Antarctica that make music. So I was like, oh man, I got to find somebody that has, because that would have been the last continent. So as far as you know, no make noise on Antarctica yet, right?
I don't. Yeah, you never know where it's. There's a lot of places that we have dealers that I don't even know about, just because I don't really do much with that anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, I can't think of. I honestly, what was the other place you said? There was 2 countries you said you haven't been to. Oh, Africa.
I've never been to the
Continent. You've never
right?
been to, yeah, continent of Africa. Yeah.
Do you have stuff in
sure
Nigeria?
we have customers. I'm almost positive that we have customers in Africa. I don't know about a dealer down there.
Do you know about that guy? Do you know about that guy in? He's either in Ghana or Uganda. He does Afro Rack, and he's built his own. Yeah. So he would be. He'd be the guy to start the party there. So
yeah.
Well, let's jump over to Strega by way of. I wanted to share this with people if they've never seen this.
There's another app. There's 2 people using the name Afro Rack though, right?
There's a wonderful gentleman in Chicago.
Yeah. Aaron.
Aaron, yes, and I met him at the KnobCon, where I've played a couple times, and he's great because he's doing something quite. It overlaps a little bit with what our fellow friend Michelle Moog does, where he goes into schools and he's working with children. He's working with kids, and especially in Chicago with impoverished youth, black youth especially, but everyone's welcome. But especially black youth in South Chicago, where, oh my God, I mean, this weekend the shootings. It's a tough place. It's a tough place in a tough time, and this gentleman is a hero because he's pulling kids in, giving them something to do after school. They're learning science, math, sound, music, computers, and we've read it a million times, folks. When kids have music and art and ways that they can engage, everything gets better. Maybe not everything, but many things get better. Their math,
it's
their
good,
science.
yeah.
So
it gives their young minds something to chew on. Sure.
Yes. So thank you for bringing up Afro Rack. But yeah, so to be continued, folks. Look up Afro Rack. So let's talk a little bit about Alessandro, because a few years ago this little video came out, and let's see if I can get the technology.
The Verbo system goes. It's mostly doing FM percussive sounds, and then I do tune with a chromatic tuner. I tune the harmonic oscillator to a specific.
So, folks, this is Alessandro Cortini of the band 9 Inch Nails, and he's doing one of these rig rundowns where he explains his equipment. And when he gets here to his modular section, he's got, well, some Verbo stuff there, but you're going to see a whole rack of make noise stuff.
Key, and then use that for drones mostly by hand. The make noise system has been around it's been with me for a little longer. This has been introduced in the Australian tour. And so this has evolved a little bit. Now I have 2 Renees as opposed to having a touch plate, a pressure point, and a Renee. One Renee is for sequences only, and the other one for stored voltages. So each song I don't need to tune it, and it's just, as long as Justin, my tech, tunes the oscillator, then each song will have its own key. and I use its own built-in echo a lot, which is the Echophone designed by Tom Erb and Anthony Rolando at Make Noise. And then I run everything through a few pedals. The Great Destroyer when it comes.
There we go. Wow, that is awesome. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, local heroes, because this was a couple of years ago. So
that was more than a few years ago. That was like six years ago, or 6 or 7 that we sent in the system was 6 or 7 years ago. It was a little while ago. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, this is Sonic State. Yeah, July 2014, June 20. So right. So he already had it. So this is in the first couple of years of Make Noise, of course, but was such an exciting moment.
Not necessarily. We started in 2008.
Okay.
And so by that, it was really early on for the shared system. For the system, yes. But we had already been making a lot of the modules that were in the system prior to that.
For 5 or 6 years.
And then, and then we started making the systems, and Alessandro was a very early adapter of the system. So the story was that he was out on the road, and he had been using he has 2 music easels, original Buchla music easels that he was using, but he didn't want to take them on the road. And he wanted something, though, that he could play. He likes to, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the way I understand it, he likes to have an element of uncertainty on stage. And so he likes to have something to where he can change it a little bit each night and have the performance feel a little different each night. And so he wanted to have some sort of patchable modular synthesizer, did not want to take his music easels on tour. And so he had called us from the road, actually, and asked if he could get a shared system, and ask if it was basically like, can you ship it to the hotel? It needs to arrive there tomorrow kind of thing.
Wow.
And we were shipping it to some hotel. I can't remember where it was, like in Oklahoma or something.
Right.
And, we hopped to it. We put it together as fast as possible and ran down to FedEx and overnighted it to this hotel. It was, it wasn't a known destination, but it landed okay, and they put it to use, and it worked really well for them. So it was on the road for 2 years. They were touring a lot more then, and it worked really well. And so that everything kind of grew out of that for the most part. That initial system that we sent them.
That's great, and what a friendship over the years. I know you folks have done. He's come to Asheville, and he's done some things here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's weird. I'm trying to remember. I tend to blend things together and mix up dates. I mean, I knew him a little bit before then through some mutual friends and some synth events that I would go to and chat with him. And I think it was through the system that I guess he maybe started to, I think he just appreciated what we were doing, and I think the friendship sort of grew out of that. But I wish I could remember things better. I'm trying to think of when he came here the first time. I think it would have been, there was that event that was not Moog Fest, but it was very similar to Moog Fest.
Okay.
Remember it, mountain music?
It was
something?
Yes, exactly. It was the one that Ashley Capps did here in town.
Yes.
The Mountain Oasis. Mountain
Oasis. Yeah. I believe that was 9 Inch Nails performed at that, and it was our 5-year anniversary. And we ended up having a little party at our shop, which was downtown, right behind Mela, the Indian food restaurant. It's right behind there.
Yum.
And no kidding. Try working behind that place. You go out, you go out to get some fresh air, and all you smell is curry.
Yeah, I'm taking a break.
But he was in town, and he already had the system, and I think we asked him to come and play at the opening party. Oh yeah, and then there was the record series, the shared system series of records, and he was one of the artists that we asked to do that as well.
That's right. There was a record.
Has already been going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
This is where having Kelly or Pete around, they can really, they've got their
with the
dates
dates.
just like, yeah,
Well,
they've got their dates down.
that must have been 2014. Would that be? Was that your 5 year? 2014.
Yeah, I
Because
guess
yeah,
so. Yeah, if we
your
started in
10 year.
2008,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah,
yeah
2013, 2014, yeah,
yeah because I
something
remember
like that.
I missed the 10 year festivities. I was on the road, but I remember that well. Big Nine Inch Nails fan. So I remember. Sadly, I haven't seen them since. It was 2014. They had Pino Palladino on bass and all that. Right. So he was in town. Yeah. So Alessandro, many people know, and if you don't, look him up. He's got some great solo records. As Tony said, there's some great news coming up with a collaboration with Tony himself. And there's also Make Noise on your records where he's involved. Tell us a little bit about that for a minute. The record label that you've
Right. Well, yeah. So the system actually came out of the record series. So this friend of mine, Surachai, he and I were in New York City at this club called Zebulon, which some
right.
folks might remember. I think they might have reopened Zebulon in LA. I'm not positive though. But it was a great club, a place to see strange music of all sorts. You talk about weird music. Zebulon was a place you could go see weird music. And I don't mean just weird as in electronic, but I mean strange jazz, strange folk. I mean, if it was weird and strange, it was a good place to go see it there at Zebulon. And he and I were there and we were chatting about, what sort of a project we could do that combined modular synthesizers and records. And we kind of came up with this idea of curating a selection of modules and building a system essentially that would be sent to like several different artists. And there would be rules around it where, no multi-tracking and it's just this collection of synthesizer modules and you record live to stereo 2-track. I think we allowed reverb just because there was no reverb module at that time. And the idea was to see with this one single instrument, how could the artist shine through and present their personality? And so in other words, like usually when you hear music, it's a combination of so many things, the studio where they recorded in, the engineer they worked with, what instrumentation was available. Nowadays, like what sort of computer synthesis were they using? There's all these factors that come in that can kind of cloud and for better or worse, I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, it could potentially cloud the artist's personality. And so the idea was you just have this one instrument, but you've got 5 different artists. How can they shine through and how can they make that simple instrument, how can they record it in a way that really allows their personality to, envelop the listener? And so we did the series of records. It was Alessandro Cortini. It was Robert A. Lowe, Keith Fullerton Whitman, Surachai, and Richard Devine.
That's awesome.
And my big concern was that we were going to get 5 records that sounded really similar because we were limiting them so much. It's just this one instrument. I mean, it was obviously a very universal, patchable instrument that somebody can really make their own. But still, there was a concern of mine. But we ended up getting the 5 very unique records. They're not full-length records. They're 7-inch singles. So I think 4 to 5 minutes per side. So that really, so we started releasing those records purely as just like a fun thing to do. And then people were getting the records and people were asking, oh, what's this system? What's the shared system? So the reason we had that name was the idea was these artists all shared this one system. It was actually, we didn't put together 5 of these systems. We didn't have the capital or the goods to do that. We built one and literally
send it around.
Exactly. We shipped it to Richard. When he was done with it, he shipped it to Robert A. Lowe, and Rob was done with it. Rob ships it to Cortini and so on. So it was literally a shared modular system. So that's why we called it the shared system. And that's why the record series was called the Shared System Series. And so people started asking, can I get a shared system? And then we thought, well, I guess people maybe want this. So we started building some shared systems and offering them to customers. And so the record series predated the system, the actual system that somebody could buy.
Right, one led to the other. No, that's a great story, and I didn't know it was the actual same system that flew around.
It was, yeah.
That's
it's
great.
Actually this. It's this one right here.
Oh,
it looks quite different than what we do today because, well, one, the cases were being made by a guy out in Southern California named Steve, and he had this. He liked to do cases sort of the way people do guitar amps, so they were all Tolex wrapped.
Right.
And everybody was doing black Tolex, and I asked if we could do something different, and he had this blonde Tolex, which at the time seemed like a good idea. Obviously, it looks quite different than the system that we offer today,
yeah.
which is right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
so yeah, much more clean and streamlined and more complete looking. This looks like an instrument, whereas this looks like something that was cobbled together.
Was a little put together. Yeah.
And it looks cobbled together on someone's workbench, and it looked, really, it kind of was.
Which it kind of was, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the actual system that was sent around, and the initial units that customers were offered looked not unlike this, very cobbled together. There was not many of them. We're talking maybe 5 or 10 or something before we went with the all black and gold look. And then another little piece of history: the very first person to get a black and gold shared system was actually Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails. He saw it at the NAMM show, and then later that evening, someone from the band called and said, "Hey, we want to get one of those black and gold shared systems." And we said, "Well, we only have one. The one we're showing at the NAMM show." And they said, "Well, can we buy that one?"
Yeah. It's Trent Reznor. So send us two. No, that's great, and thank you for giving some close-ups there for folks. As long as I've worked with synthesizers and just studied them and looked in books and magazines, most of my life, since literally the late '70s. But I still, and you held up the system in the classic black CV case, the second one that Tony held up. And I have 7 or 8 of those modules, and I have that case. But still, when I see that, I think about the alien cockpit in Men in Black when Will Smith climbs in there and he's like, "Well, I got to figure this out." I mean, that's what I love, and I want to talk about that for a minute because you have such a unique vision, and I know it's you and your team, and I know that, and I want you to talk about that. People like Tom Erb and other folks. But let's give some credit to the madman behind it all, and because they're beautiful pieces of art. There's this little hieroglyphics thing that's going on, and everything makes sense. The colors of the lines that show you things, the different shapes. That once you get to know these instruments, you realize, that little symbol matches with that one, and this means that. Talk to us a little bit about that aesthetic. I know that's a tough question because you are who you are. You come up with this stuff. But talk to us about that almost psychedelic, different look that your stuff has.
Well, there was a few things that I was thinking about really early on. And it's funny because this guy just emailed me not too long ago. It was a fellow, Ross Healy. He was from Australia. And I remember this is years ago. We were talking about where synthesizers were going to go. And I was talking about how I really wanted to make a synthesizer that people could use even if they couldn't see it. And so that idea, the idea behind that was for each module to kind of have a unique layout, a unique panel layout, which is something that Don Buchla did quite a bit. And then later modulars, they seem to move more into this kind of more uniform appearance where all the jacks are at the bottom, the knobs are all at the top and spaced in the same way. So that literally, if you were just touching a module, you wouldn't be able to tell one from the next. And it really struck me how on the Buchla system, and the Serge system as well, it's just, I I didn't really spend as much time studying the Serge system. So the Buchla system was the one that really did it for me. Every module just looks so different. Like every module was like its own little universe with the knobs in very different places, the jacks in all sorts of different places. And to me, it just seemed like there was no way you could mistake, for example, this source of uncertainty with the dual complex oscillator. I mean, they were just so different. There was no way to mistake them because everything about them was different. Where the knobs were, the size of the knobs, where the jacks were. And so that was one thing really early on that stuck out to me as being an important part of making an instrument that felt really playable. So for example, sometimes if I'm patching, and I really, really, really like Grant Richter's circuits. I think he is one of the great synthesizer designers of the 90s, at least, I guess, but maybe of all time. He's made some wonderful circuits. He's the person behind the Wogglebug, the original Wogglebug circuit. We licensed it from Grant. Grant had a company called Wired, and everything about Wired was wonderful to me, except I always would get mixed up when I was patching those synthesizers because all the jacks are at the bottom and all the knobs are at the top, and the jacks are just this big cluster, you know? And then when the nice thing about it is it's cleaner. All your cables are sort of in the same area, but for me, it was really hard for me to know. There was something, there was a disconnect, you know, this jack that controls this parameter, the parameter's up here, but the jack's all the way down here. It didn't make any sense to me. Let's just put the jack next to the knob. So it makes more sense.
Bingo.
Yeah. And it's just different visions, you know. Grant's synthesizers sound gorgeous. They're wonderful. But that abstraction of the jack from the panel control was really hard for me. And so that was one thing that really early on, I kind of, and I stuck with that throughout. And then the hieroglyphs, I think, was just more this idea of like, you're always reading things. You're reading manuals. You're reading books about, you know, how to play an instrument or whatever. Like, I was just thinking, like, if you pick up a guitar, I mean, some guitars might say tone and volume on the knobs, you know, down by the jack, but, you know, there's not like notes for you to read on every fret of a guitar, or a violin isn't like covered with like instructional notes of like what each string is. This is the A string. No, you just know. You play violin, you know where the A string is, and you know where the fifth fret is on your guitar. You learn it. It just becomes muscle memory. And so I think I was kind of trying to get into that idea with the modules of using imagery as opposed to text, so that at a glance you would just start to learn where things were and learn what things did, and be less concerned about reading, you know, this is a pitch control, this is a time control. And instead it's just, you get more into like a flow state of just working with the instrument in the same way that a violin player would play their violin. So yeah, I think, and I don't know, I think it's successful for some folks. Some folks really, really like it. And I think it is just tragically unsuccessful for other people. It's very divisive. The look and the feel of the instruments is very divisive, as it should be. You know, you see the same thing with any instrument. You see the same thing with guitars. There's people who swear by a Telecaster and would never play any guitar except for a Telecaster. And then there's other people who cannot stand the feel of a Telecaster. So it's all, you know, you got to play what feels right to you. Sure. And for the people that our system feels right to, they love it and they want to play it all the time. And then we get a lot of people who they love the ideas, but they get the modules and they don't click, and you know, it just doesn't work for them. Sometimes they let us know. Trust me.
That's great. Well, no, I horses for courses is it courses for horses? I don't know.
Horses for courses, sure.
Is that what it is? The English.
I mean that I don't think really ties into what I'm saying, but that is a great. I mean, I do think horses for courses. I stand by that. Like, don't go to your make noise shared system, you know, when really what you want is a mini Moog.
Right.
I mean, maybe you would have fun trying to do that, but if what you really want to play is a mini Moog, get a mini Moog. You know, like you said, horses for courses. But yeah, I think this is more like I don't know. It's like a thing maybe only artists know about it. Like certain things just click with you.
Aesthetic. Yeah.
Um,
No, it's excuse me. I would agree. I've run into just a couple people who it's like, oh, they're too confusing for me, but the vast
sure,
majority
yeah,
of people put the time in, and I love that you compared it to classic instruments like guitars and violins. That's a great point because much like those, you gotta put the time in,
you
and
really do,
yeah,
yeah.
there's a little thing going on these
Well,
days where people want to just press a button or
yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, making electronic music has become so much easier
yeah,
than it was when you go back to like 1992 or 94 and listen to that music. Nowadays, you know, you take a form of music like take like a drum and bass track from the
right,
early 90s.
yeah,
And I mean, today you can get an app for your phone that will let you make a drum and bass track while you're, you know, riding the train to work.
2 minutes,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, and if there was a period of time where people were spending, you know, hundreds of hours crafting those samples and sequencing them. It was a
yeah,
lot of work. And I think, yeah, people definitely, the expectations with electronic music instruments has changed a lot over the years to where, yeah, some people
yeah,
want things to just happen immediately. And you know, I think that's fine for those people. I think they should purchase and install of Ableton Live and work with all the loops. There's MIDI phrases, there's drum loops, there's everything is there for you to cut and paste and assemble music as you think it should be. Go that direction. The modular synthesizer is definitely not going to cooperate with you if that's your expectations. You have to really go into a modular synthesizer, being prepared to search for the beauty and find that beauty and then lure it out and capture it in a recorded form.
yeah,
You know, that's all there. You have to have your mind wide open for that perfect moment that
yeah,
happens. You know, he says if you go into it expecting some specific result, you will
yeah.
be disappointed.
No, that's beautiful, and wow, that's a great uh, paragraph of answer that says so much. I agree, and I've said this to you over the years, and I said it to you recently because I recently got uh, your teleplexer, which if people and you did that's what you did. You laughed. You're like, really? You got one because it's so weird. It's so out
It
there,
is.
folks. It's based on technology of telegraphs, right? And the Morse code kind of
Yeah, so to
you
some
know
degree, yeah, that and actually the idea actually came to me. I guess this is something where so I later did get a little more into the Serge instruments and Serge instruments, the Buchla instruments as well. They use banana jacks,
right.
and there's this kind of brilliant thing you can do with banana jacks because the way the physical form factor is, you know, with like a 1/4 inch tip sleeve jack or a mini jack, you have to like insert it fully before the signal passes. The signal, the first element is ground, and then the second element is the actual signal path. But with a banana jack, there's only one signal path. There is no ground. So right at the very tip of the entry point of the jack is the signal path, and so you can literally play a modulation or audio destination. You have your source is coming out of the cable, and then you're literally just tapping it on the banana jack, and you can get these momentary modulations. And I thought this is so fun and so great. And there's not really any way to do it with Eurorack because of the form factor of the jack. And so the teleplexer was an attempt to allow for that. And then I was sort of thinking about how the telegraph operates in a very similar way, where you're basically making a momentary signal path for a tone generator in order to tap out a pattern that would send a message. And so this allows you to do that with regular mini jack
Right.
cables.
No,
And so you would patch sources, or you could do either direction. It's bidirectional, so you could do sources or destinations into the jacks, and then have your sources or destinations on cables, and tap them on the different blocks, and that sends them to different combinations of those jacks.
yeah, no, and I remember saying to you because I got it and I worked with it for about 10 days, and I was like, wrapped my mind around it. I was like, wow, this is cool. And then
It's
suddenly,
weird.
yeah, and then suddenly I was like in the middle of practicing, and I said, I have no idea what this thing is doing. So it's got that. But I love. So this is discontinued though, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's probably
sadly,
our
yeah.
worst selling module of all time.
Yeah, because it's so weird. Well, those of you out in Synthland, they're available. This one's at here you go on Reverb, so you can find them out there if you care to.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But if you're one of the stranger people like I am, you might want one. But hopefully there's a rebirth of it one day. But you said something amazing in that answer as well, which is it just reminds me what I so many things that I admire about your approach, Tony, and what you said. You're always thinking about this meta level of like you're looking at how people perform, and you're looking down to this granular level of like, okay, these jacks, they go in, there's a ground, everything is based around that. How about I explode that out into a whole other thing? And you do it while simultaneously giving respect and linkage to this 100-year-old technology.
Yeah, yeah, the
Wow,
telegraph, yeah.
I love your brain, bro. It's just these connections. Let's spend just a minute. Well, I want to say a couple things. This is there's so many things, but I wanted to say also that it's beautiful how you've brought up. I don't know if you're even noticing it. Perhaps you do, and hope people watching do. You've brought up people like Alessandro Cortini and Trent and Sarah Bell Reed and Robert A. Lowe. You brought up Bana Hafar came up before, and Rich Devine. And this is a quick list, folk. I know I'm not saying the whole list, but just who we've talked about tonight. And these are some of the most interesting and creative, some of them, of the most interesting creative people who are so daring. And I love that they all come together with, hey, we love make noises stuff. I wanna also let people know, because some people don't, you are a wonderful musician, and that the few times I've gotten the chance to hear you perform, which was maybe at a lecture or make weird music, make noise music event, has been wonderful. And just the other day, I was listening to this thing, Podular Modcast, that you did.
Oh, yeah.
And you do this beautiful performance at the end of one of those. Talk about your own music for a minute, and I know you're doing something with Alessandro, but can we expect any Tony Rolando music or streaming or performances?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I didn't really make music for about over a decade, well over a decade. I wasn't really making music or recording music at all. And then every once in a while, people would ask me to do something like a modular on the spot. But I never really felt like I was in the right headspace because I wasn't really in the process. I think if you're making music, it kind of has to become a pretty big part of your life. Like you end up like thinking about it all the time, just like anything that you do, designing a module, painting a painting, you're still painting the painting, even when you're not standing in front of your easel. You're just painting it in your mind and thinking about choices that you made and what you would do on the next painting that you're going to paint. And so I wasn't really in that mindset, but I feel like in the last year, especially, with the pandemic slowing down so much at the company, I really I got motivated to make music again. And I mean, in a really serious way that I haven't felt since I was in my 20s, probably. I just would wake up and felt just compelled to make music constantly. And I'm still feeling it pretty strongly. And so, yeah, I've been recording a lot. And I have 3 releases coming. They've all been terribly delayed due to the, I think there's a shortage, or not a shortage, there's, I guess like a shortage of workforce, delayed vinyl really badly. And so I do have a vinyl release coming out on Important Records this fall. It's called Breaking as a Memory. And then I have a cassette coming out with them soonish that's called Old Cool Echoes. And then I have another cassette coming out. So that's also on Important Records, or their cassette. They have a cassette label. And so it's coming out on that. And then Robert A.A. Lowe runs an imprint called Adventures. And I have a cassette coming out with him, but again, it's been delayed. Rob has been very busy lately with some pretty exciting projects that I'm not at liberty to discuss.
Okay.
And so that's been greatly delayed as well, because I believe he wants to do the artwork for that one. So I have those 3 releases coming. And then lately I've been working on my own shared system recordings. I am cheating a little bit. I'm doing some of it. I'm just doing live straight to stereo 2-track as was originally prescribed. But one of the pieces that I've been working on, I just couldn't help it. I did a layering of, I had 2 different patches, and I recorded like 4 takes of each of them and kind of arranged it into something. I just couldn't help it. But the other 2 are straight to stereo. And then I have a piece that's coming on the Strega compilation I was mentioning earlier. One is something I did just me, just Tony Rolando, and then the other is something that I did with Alessandro. We did like a collaborative piece. Although I have to say his contribution to our collaborative piece was far greater than my own. It was I would say it was quite humbling. I sent my recorded channels over to him, and he added to them and sent it back, and it was like like the earth split open, and all these new emotions came out from like the earth literally like cracked open, and like this stuff was just like blazing by me. It was kind of incredible. So I've been recording a lot. I guess it's really fun to have that motivation to make music again. I wouldn't say that I lost it. I think I was just so focused on designing the system that I didn't really feel like I had time, I think is what it was. One thing, we finished designing the Renee, and then it's like, okay, now we got to do the phonogene, and then phonogene's done. Okay, now we've got to do the herb verb. And it's just, that stuff, it takes a lot of energy. And so I think a lot of times I'd come home from working at Make Noise, and I just needed like silence, I didn't have any room left in my brain for more sound. So having a little break from that, I think, left some room in my brain for some sound, and I filled it up with some potentially useless sound that I created myself.
I'm excited for that, because the Zen approach, for one. I mean, I know that's a cliched term, but your Zen approach to a lot of things really come through in the music. I really want to give a shout out to that Modular Modcast. Obviously, we've got a lot of synthesizer heads here. If you don't know about this wonderful podcast, Modular Modcast, and there's 2 interviews with Tony, including this beautiful piece of music that he does. By the way, that's just a quick aside. There's about 8 different fantastic synth-related podcasts. Another one I've been listening to is Source of Uncertainty, and it's around Buchla modules and Buchla musicians. So there's what a time we're living in. I mean, I used to wait a month to get the next issue of Electronic Musician or Future Music or something. Jumping back, I wanna finish. We got a little time left. Thank you so much for your time, Tony, too, because I know, like you said, it never stops. But
just chatting with a friend here.
Yeah, and we're going to close with a little Strega, so people know about that. But I wanted to also say again, with that list of artists, all these people that use these Make Noise equipment, and I think I read that even on not even, because he does a lot of electronic music, but on the Yeezus album by Kanye, that's got a big bunch of modular stuff, and someone said there was a few Make Noise pieces in there, and all kinds of other stuff. But that album Yeezus, folks, if you don't know that, and I don't care what you think about Kanye, that's fine, but if you don't like him at all, but you like electronic music, if you go on YouTube, there's an instrumental version of this record, Yeezus.
Oh,
And this record it's incredible hardcore electronic music. I mean, it's so unlike anything else in hip hop any years before or after. There's really no drum machines. There's these crazy, weird, asymmetric loops, and it's all weird modular. So check that out. But for Make Noise on records, one of the ones I just heard about, tell me if this is accurate. Was it a Taylor Swift song or something that someone used at the end of her song? Well, who was that?
Yeah. So there is a recent, and I obviously I know Taylor Swift, but I'm not super familiar with all of her records enough to where I could tell you the exact song. But there was a song. There's a video for it, and the video, she's like in a cabin. If I remember correctly, it's pretty recent. It's like in the last year. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful song. And the person who did a bunch of sound design for that song used a bunch of modules, one of which was a Make Noise Morphogene. And it's like towards the end of the song, you really start to hear it a lot, the Morphogene. Well, I'm guessing, you know, again, I don't have, it's just somebody had told us that, I think a shop had told us that they had sold this person the Morphogene and then kind of pointed us to the video, if I'm correct. Or maybe the person, sometimes artists get in touch with us about getting stuff. It might be that they got in touch and told us about it. Maybe they even listed it. Maybe they, I think maybe they did in the video. Maybe they listed the musicians, and there's a musician who's listed as playing the shared system, maybe. I'm not positive.
It's just I heard it mentioned, and okay, but that's great to that you this is factual. Hey, you know, look, Taylor Swift, people can make fun. That's another artist where she's got top-notch players, producers, co-writers.
She's
so I'm not
looking
surprised.
to push the envelope as much as possible. You know, pop music pushes the envelope all the time. I mean, it retains the pop format, which is all about selling a personality. You know, they're selling Taylor Swift.
Sure.
And not, you know, it's not about the chord progression. It's about Taylor Swift. But, you know, you need a lot of fresh approaches to sell that personality. Kanye needs a fresh approach to sell Kanye. Kanye can't sell Kanye with that same beat that every other artist is using. Kanye's got to come up with a fresh beat that is just Kanye's sound. That's how you're going to sell to Kanye. And Taylor's the same way. Taylor Swift, they're trying to sell Taylor Swift. They got to come up with a fresh sound that no one else has. That's only Taylor Swift. So they're going to go, you know, to the far reaches of the earth to do that. And they've got the finances to explore stuff. And so that's why, there is a lot of innovation in pop music over the years. I mean, look, if you look through history, the artists that have used really, really specific sounds to kind of sell that persona. Bowie, you know, I mean, how many Bowie tracks have such strange sounds on them that are very, very memorable and help to sell, you know, Bowie. They help to make Bowie like that pop icon. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in pop music.
I love it.
Crazy stuff.
Sorry, I love it, and I love to hear you say that, and I love how again, we've talked about so many forms of music, and I love your attitude on that because pop music, it's great, and Bowie in that whole Berlin period where he was using these different brand new Eventide harmonizers and synthesizers, or the Beatles who bought a Moog modular right away.
They did, right? You know, or how about I mean the Beatles? They go and they find musicians from India.
Right.
To add to their repertoire because again, they're trying to stand out. They're trying to be unique to all the other stuff that's happening in pop music at the time.
Yeah. That's a great point. So Strega, I want to talk about Strega, and Strega, as you said, had been ready, but then got delayed a little bit. But I want to start out as we talk about artists that use your equipment, which is really where the rubber hits the road, right? You want this stuff to be out in the world. And we had a concert just not even a week ago. And this is a gentleman, and I'll play a little bit for folks. Ladies and gentlemen, 88 years old.
Yeah.
You got Don Preston. And let me just set this up for a second and say, well, full disclosure, Don's a close friend. I've worked with him for 20 years. Don Preston was in Frank Zappa's band from 1966 to 74. Then he played with all kinds of people, Jack Bruce and Leo Sayer and all kinds of people, Carla Bley, Paul Bley. He's still out there. So he did a
That's
show.
incredible.
Yeah, this is a streaming show they did. No audience. Everyone vaccinated and safe. His little trio. And at 88 years old, a couple of months ago, he called me and said, what's this Strega thing I'm seeing? Make Noise has a new thing? Because he already had a No Coast. And
Right.
I put him in touch with Rodent, and he ordered one. And I want to just look at him for a second here on video to remind people, don't ever lose your inspiration. Don't give up. Get up and do some music in the morning, because this man at 88, he also just bought a looper and a cello so he could learn cello to do more electronic music.
Incredible.
Yeah. So let's get a little taste of this. And folks, when it cuts to his little table of stuff, you will see a lot of stuff. There's a Moog Sub 32 or something. There's a Chaos Pad, but you'll see a No Coast and a Strega. There we go. On the left, you can see the Make Noise stuff. Gotta hit the gong first. So there we go. Just what I'll do is I'll put the link for the show so people can enjoy that. That's a full show. But just to touch base and to say that this is a man who was going to surplus stores in the 50s and making his own synthesizers, and he's in love with the Strega. It's that different and unique. So tell us about the Strega. Tell people who've never heard of it what that instrument is, and yeah.
It's an instrument that I designed in collaboration with Alessandro Cortini, and it took us many years. Actually, there was quite a few iterations of it. It wasn't always called Strega, obviously. I think the first name I had for it was the Cortisol, combination of the Buchla Music Easel and Cortini.
Sure.
And originally it was going to be much larger, and there was all sorts of stuff hanging off of the main voice. There was a looper and sequencers and touch plates and all this stuff. And then there was this point, this is all happening over the course of several years, where I think we had done the Zero Coast, and I sent one to Alessandro, and I think he really liked how small it was. And I think he had come to me and say, hey, I think our instrument, maybe it should be the same size as a Zero Coast. And so that's really where the Strega started to come into form, because having that form factor, that size, it put a set of limitations around us to where it really helped us to focus in and figure out what this instrument should be. And so from a design standpoint, I was already a fan of Alessandro's music, but what it really meant is that I went back and listened to all of his music more and thought about it a lot and tried to understand um, what he did. I also went and saw him perform a few times. There was variations. I saw him do a performance with the shared system a few times. I saw him do another performance that for a different record where he was using mostly pre-recorded tracks, but then post-processing them live. There was several. Oh, I saw him do a performance with the Synthy. There were several different performances that I watched, and I tried to understand like what it was that he did and what it was that he looked for in an instrument. And I also spent a bit of time in his studio where he showed me his instrument collection and kind of pointed out things that he was excited about, things that he wanted to, I guess, combine into an instrument. And so, yeah, it was a lot of that, a lot of just watching how he performed and listening to his records and talking with him about music and instruments and what was the things that inspired him and really got him motivated to create sound and music. And from those, you know, what I could glean off of all that, combined with him pointing to very specific circuits, some of which were quite instrumental in developing it, others which I guess, I don't know, it's hard to say. I mean, so he eventually came to Asheville, and that's where, at that point, I kind of had put together an actual prototype that was on something called breadboard, which is basically like a board with a bunch of holes in it where you can stab components in and kind of interconnect them with jumper wires. And so he came to Asheville for a week, and we literally sat in my office, and he would play the instrument that I had come up with, and we did like live circuit revisioning essentially. He would play it, and he would ask for a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, or how could we make it so that this would do this, and so on. And so I was literally just changing the circuit in real time, kind of reacting to his playing of the instrument. So we did that for about a week, and that all kind of, all of the basically 2 years of discussing music and instruments and hanging out in his studio and watching him perform. And then, this week of doing live circuit design, essentially, all sort of culminated into an initial prototype of what became called the Strega, which was it's sort of an Italian word for witch that he threw at me one day, and I said, "Wow, the Strega, yeah, that's great, that's perfect." And and from there, once we had the hardware prototype, it just kind of we fine tuned it for a little while, and it was finished. And then we had to sit on it for a while, obviously, because like I said, we couldn't launch it when we had originally intended.
Sure.
I think that kind of gives you an idea. I mean, I think basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is while he doesn't, Alessandro doesn't write or read schematics or develop printed circuit boards, he sort of lent a vision. There was just something that he was reaching for, and I worked with him to help him, be able to, reach out and grab that sound that he was looking for. But at the same time, something we were conscious of the whole time in developing was trying to make it universal enough that people could allow their own artistic personality to shine through. We didn't want it to feel like a Cortini plugin where everything you put through this would sound like this one way. And really in keeping with the spirit of not unlike what we did with the Shared System series, we sent Stregas out to a few different artists and asked them to contribute to this compilation that we're doing. And it is kind of interesting how different all the tracks sound. Honestly, I was really surprised. Again, we were kind of worried we were going to get, 10 tracks that sounded really similar. And we didn't. We got 10 really unique tracks. So that was really nice to hear. Yes,
That's
sir.
fantastic, and it's so beautiful. And folks, look at that! I want a poster, a color poster. That it just if you have no idea of what this instrument is, it's just kind of cool modern art. And now, real in layperson's terms, tell me the sections here. There's an oscillator section. I understand. There's a reverb section. There's a filtering kind of
Yeah.
thing. Give us an idea of what these little sections are that are divided vertically.
So working left to right, the first section is a way to put external sounds into the Strega. And so you have an external input with a strength control. And it's called strength because it affects not only the gain of the signal, but also below it at the bottom, there's a CV output. So it's an envelope follower that lets you derive a voltage, a control voltage from the dynamics of the signal that's entering at the external input. And that external input can be injected into the second half of the Strega, which I call the echo verb. It's a sort of a strange combination of a delay, multi-tap delay line and a reverb. And then next to that is the Strega tones. And that's sort of like I guess, the core of the Strega voice. It's an oscillator, a voltage controlled oscillator that feeds a very, I wouldn't call it, I guess it's a VCA. I guess technically it's a balanced modulator. I don't know. It's just pretty. So that's the activation circuit. So the idea was, Stregas were similar to alchemists. There's some ties there. I'm probably getting this all wrong, and I hope I don't upset any people who study these things. I read a bit about it and learned about it and kind of got inspired by some of the terminology and the symbols. And it's just this idea of trying to create something from nothing, and alchemy is certainly that. And
Wow.
so there is this sort of, some of these are nods to sort of the sort of science of alchemy. And so you activate the experiment at the VCA. So that's the activation section there. And then next to that is the tones, the Strega tones. And when you activate the tones, they're fed into the filter in time experiment. And that's you've got a control for time and decay and filter. And then what that is that's that echo verb that I was talking about. But where it's a little bit different than a lot of other delay line type circuits is where the filter is situated. There's also more than one filter. And so it effectively makes the echo almost a part of the synthesis. Usually an echo or a reverb is something that's post-processing. So you would have your sound programmed on your mini Moog or whatever you're using, and then you might patch that sound into an echo or a delay line or a reverb. With this, the reverb is more central. It comes before the filter, and so the multi-tap delay line reverb, echo verb, I call it, where it's situated makes it integral to the synthesis method itself, and so the results are I think potentially that's where it becomes a more unique sounding instrument. Honestly, the blend control, that's the very top right. Initially, I almost didn't even put that in there because I kind of felt like you would always just want to have the wet signal. So the blend control it takes a tap straight off from the external input in the Strega tones and it skips over the rest of the circuit, the echo verb, the filter. It skips over that and goes straight to the output. So it lets you get a dry sound. Again, I almost didn't put that in, but then I felt like it might limit some of the functionality in the use cases where people would maybe want to use the Strega to, say, process a drum machine or something, but they still wanted to be able to hear a little bit of the original sound. So I did put it in there in the end. But like I said, the echo verb section is integral to the synthesis. And so that's maybe where it's a little stranger, a little bit unique to your typical signal path.
Yeah, that's. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there's also a function generator in the bottom right that is very different to other function generators we have at Make Noise. It's very kind of like lumpy. Like it's not like, it doesn't have that real sharp percussive sound that something like Maths.
Oh, right.
It's actually more inspired by the Synthes trapezoid generator.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in this that takes from different, inspiration from different instruments that I played in Alessandro's studio. There's these signals. There's two signals. Actually, I think there's 3 points where, there's 3 different points where there's this signal called interference that's sort of related to some mechanical feedbacks that happen in some instruments, such as the Synthi or the ARP 2600, where they have these speakers built in, and the speakers literally like rattle the chassis and can have a deep effect on the spring reverbs, for example. And it just the sound, you hear this sort of rattling of the chassis, and it kind of changes how the instrument sounds to you, the person playing it. So there's definitely some other oddities in there. Like the touch ends, I'll call them. I think we call them gateways, and I'm embarrassed I can't remember how we referred to them in the manual. Sometimes things okay. Over the course of development, you come up with these initial names, and sometimes they stick. Like you might call it, like I said, I mean, this, some of my early folders of research for the Strega project is quite literally the folders are called Cortisol. Or, and so like some names don't stick. Other names, the first thing you call it, it's like that's what it ends up being called from day one and until the day it goes into production. So the touch gateways were called something else initially, and now they're called touch gateways, I believe. So the idea with those was to sort of related to the teleplexer. They're like momentary modulation points where you're just using your body to transfer the signal. So it really doesn't work with all signals. It mostly works with signals that have very sharp edges. And so that's why the choices that were made for the touch, the sources are mostly signals that have very hard edges.
Right.
I'm getting maybe a little too technical here. Sorry.
No, look, there's a lot of nerds watching, so it's okay. And people who want to learn about this, and for those of you who are not catching that last little reference, those little circles and squares that are kind of brass colored is what Tony's referring to, that where you touch them and you make a connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Your
body is the connection. So
yeah.
Again, what a quantum level. I mean, there's some other devices through history.
Oh, absolutely.
Touch, it's Buchla, etc. But to bring that in 2020, 21 is so cool. Wow. Well, that's a great explanation. I want to just wrap with just 2 other quick ideas here, and one of them is let's go to this video, which is.
All right, so I've added a few more things here. I'm using the dynamic envelope output from the zero control now to modulate the absorb on Strega. And I am also taking the envelope follower output here to control the time on the zero control. And I'm taking this output here, which produces a chaotic signal that is influenced by the settings you have on both the delay and the filter. And I'm using that to control the direction on the zero control.
So, folks, so that's Sarah Bell Reed, who we spoke about before, and I encourage you to go watch some of her videos that she's done, and that brings me to just the last 2 points that I wanted to bring up for people. Just a salute also to Make Noise Music and kind of the larger mission which I think that they've taken a look and seen where synthesizers are going, and synth music, electronic music, experimental music, whatever you want to call it, musique concrète. And I've heard Tony say this in other interviews, how frankly for many years it's been a boys' club, and kind of, and I love that they celebrate that. And there's this new movie, Sisters with Transistors, but from the beginning, Make Noise and Tony's amazing partner Kelly Calbell, that's always been the mission. And I know Kelly's had that No Coast meetups for women, non-binary, and trans folks. It's a very welcoming company, and then people like Robert A. Lowe and Bana Hafar and Richard. There's so many great things happening around the planet with music, and I love how you all jump in and kind of embrace this new diversity. So I wanted to salute that and thank you for that. Now, Bana Hafar, who we didn't get to talk about that much. She's over in Lebanon, I understand.
Yeah.
And she just opened up, or helped open up, a synth workshop. Have you been following that? And so I folks, I put the link for Bana Hafar into our chat. She's Sinusoidal Tendencies on Instagram, and
incredible Instagram name,
isn't it? Right? And so folks, check this out. But Bana, who is again one of the leading voices in synthesis performance, as is her former partner Rodent, who works for Make Noise and is amazing, and the two of them founded Modular on the Spot. But I really want people to follow Bana because she's over in Lebanon. She's in a war zone, and she is helping to create a synthesizer center where people can come and learn about music and learn about synthesis and electronics. So amazing. And I know they're doing some fundraising and things like that. So those of you folks that if you haven't just a quick soundbite because I'm running low on time, but really inspiring, folks, when we get up in the morning and don't realize that we're not risking being bombed. We're not risking a war zone, and music is pulling folks through. And I just wanted to give it a shout out because Bana's in the Make Noise family, and I thought, let's make sure people know she's worked so much with these folks. But again, salute to her and Meg and Kelly, amazing, and everyone at the factory, everyone, Jake and Walker and everyone that's there, Rodent, Lee, amazing people that I run into at the supermarket. So it's a joy. So I want to touch on that, and I also wanted to touch on one more area, which is your thoughts on what I think is one of the real threads that makes Make Noise music so unique, is your passion for the history of synthesis. The fact that there's a Make Noise module that goes all the way back to 1896 for influence, the Teleharmonium and the Teleharmonic, and the fact that you're always very careful to point out to folks things like telegraph technology, telephone technology, stuff in the 30s, 40s, 50s, the Ons Martineau and Theremin. I love that. Talk to me a little bit about that, about your kind of, Brooklyn Public Library journey to now on history.
Oh, I think it's just a place that I find some inspiration. I think I feel like a lot of musicians look to the past as well. I think to not look to the past maybe is I don't know. I feel like you're missing out on a lot of opportunity to see what other artists or designers or musicians did in the past. I don't. It's something about it just really inspires me. I like to read about and learn about how things came to the point that they are now. So, and I think specifically with the Buchla stuff, I think it was all just. It's really hard for people today to understand how hard it was to actually interface with those instruments. even just 5 years ago. Now there's endless clone projects where you can literally go to a website and order everything you need to build a clone of a Buchla module. And it wasn't always like that for, especially, you go back to like the early 2000s or even 2010, I feel like it was still pretty hard to experience those instruments. And so I think looking at pictures of them I don't know, I just like to do, I had this folder of pictures of the 200 series modules, especially, and I would just wonder about how they operated, what they sounded like, what was it like to use this module. I mean, sure, you could find records that were made with these modules. There was an amazing collection of Suzanne Ciani's music that came out. It was a collection of it seems like a lot of her work, like not just recorded music, but also work that she did for, like sound logos and whatnot.
Sure, Coca-Cola
where she was using,
and pinball and all that, yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot of that stuff is on there, and a lot of that stuff where she was using the Buchla system. And then, they started reissuing Morton Zabotnik's music, like Wild Bull and Touch. And so you could hear them in action, but who is it? Oh my God, there's one that was so good. I'm not gonna remember it right now, but anyhow, I think that it was still different. You could hear them on those records, but you weren't necessarily experiencing them. And so I think I would just look at these pictures and just kind of develop these like alternate universes of like how these things sounded or operated. And even though, and you could say the same with like a Teleharmonium. I obviously never experienced a concert of the Teleharmonium. Right. I never played one, but it's fun to think about them. It's fun to read about them and just imagine, oh, here's an instrument where they needed a train to transport it. Like multiple box cars were used to transport the different parts of the Telharmonium. That's how large and how heavy it was.
It's amazing.
The idea behind the instrument is so like forward thinking. We all stream music today without a second thought. The idea behind the Telharmonium was it was basically going to be an organ that could pump music through your telephone lines. And so they needed these giant alternators that could push a ton of current, because they had, you don't know where someone's telephone, they might be 3 miles away or 5 miles away. You needed a lot of current. You needed to pump the sound through these telephone lines, for miles away. So they had these giant alternators that would generate all this current, and you're literally playing this massive, set of alternators that are spinning at different frequencies and shooting the sound through, telephone lines to people. I mean, people had to basically decide they weren't going to take any phone calls for an hour while they listened to music.
Yeah.
Something about that just cracks me up. It's just like a strange moment in history, and music consumption. So yeah, stuff like that. I just find it really intriguing, and it can kind of spark ideas for the future. And I think I maybe credit, I don't know, you can maybe even go back in and look at some musicians. A lot of musicians have done that. A lot of musicians have looked to the past in order to find the future. It's just,
absolutely.
Whether it's just a thing that I think is I guess a method. Some people say they don't do it. I always feel like Richard Devine doesn't look to the past at all, but maybe he does. He just doesn't tell us about it.
Well, yeah, that's another, we could spend an hour just on Richard Devine, his thoughts on this. But no, that's so well put. Again, you're obviously looking forward. You're creating new stuff. It's about now and the future. But that respectful learning from these incredible ideas, I don't know if you saw it, but I think it was New York or New York Times did a little 10-minute video on the history of the vocoder. And they went.
Oh yeah.
They went. You saw that, and the same thing again. When you really learn that, hey, in the 30s and 40s, there were telephone lines under the ocean led to this. I think it's important.
My
to
favorite
learn
part about
stuff.
that, so that's a really good book, actually. It's called How to Wreck a Nice Beach.
Oh, How to Wreck a Nice Beach.
How to Wreck a Nice Beach, and
to
so
wreck
the
a nice
title,
beach. Okay.
how the title comes from a misinterpretation of how to recognize speech.
Right.
How to wreck a nice beach.
Right. No, that's how I heard it, which is awesome.
And so, there's a really cool section in that book where they're talking about how they would make these they were like keys that were records. And so you would send a transmission, but it would be vocoded. And in order to play the transmission back so that you could actually understand it, there would be a record that you would play, and that was the how it was demodulated into something that sounded like speech. And it's just kind of this incredible thing. It's like, okay, we needed to send a secret message, so first they encrypt the message, and then they take the encryption key and literally cut it to a piece of vinyl, and then that is secretly shipped to the destination of the message, separate from the recording of the message, so that they don't get intercepted, right? Because if you have both, then you can hear the message.
You're done.
But if you only get the encrypted message, or you only get the key, and you're screwed, you can't figure it out. So they would separately ship them to the destinations, and then they would play them back. They had to, set up to like synchronize these two playback discs so that they could have, the unencrypted message. It's just, God, it's incredible to think about that process of, that we take so for granted today.
Exactly.
Encrypting some data or something today is as easy as, buying the software to do it and, waiting 3 minutes while it encrypts it, or probably less than that.
That's it. No, well, that's a great, just studying history. And folks, if you've not read about the Teleharmonium, please go do so. It was
Thaddeus Cahill.
Thaddeus Cahill. It was in a giant building at 39th and Broadway in New York City.
Yeah.
And as Tony said, they needed railroad cars to bring the parts together. And that was the crazy idea, to stream music, by the way, except on phone lines, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow. Well, let's end there, and that's a great spot because that brings it full circle to 1896. But we're on the cutting edge here tonight with Tony Rolando, folks. And it's just been a fascinating discussion, as many discussions as I've had with the man. This was one of my favorite ones. Thanks again, Tony. We'll see you soon somewhere in town. Folks, thank you so much for being here. What a great crowd, and really no questions, just a lot of love and people just saying they're digging it and they're subscribing to Instagram and all that. So thanks for being here, folks. Again, go to Make Noise Music, and you can branch out from there, or their YouTube or their Instagram. Please subscribe. Please like. I do this every 2 weeks. It's called the Gear Spotlight. In 2 weeks, I've got an amazing synthesist, a gentleman named Eric Norlander, who's just a great keyboard player and synthesist. And on Friday, the 16th, a week from this Friday, an amazing singer. She's a songwriter, she's a singer, and her name is Dolette McDonald. And a lot of folks know her because they've seen her with people like Sting or Laurie Anderson and Talking Heads. And her own solo music and lots of jazz tours that she's done. So Dolette McDonald coming up, Eric Norlander coming up, a lot of other fun stuff. Thanks a lot for being here. Tony, stick around for a minute. I'm going to end the stream and then we'll be on. Folks, we'll see you again next time. Thank you so much for checking this out. And cool, we're off the air.